Welcome everybody to Engage, Influence, and Convert, the new frontier in claims testing. In today's session, we're going to take a look at a series of different question types which allow you to enhance your claims testing. Now, the value of marketing claims messaging can really not be understated. As Sandeep Mahatme, a financial advisor at High Radius, puts it this way: in the age of informed choices, marketing claims testing isn't just an option, it's the cornerstone for success. It's a testament to the brand's commitment to delivering on what it promises. And I think that's a super important piece of how we should think about the value of claims testing to our business. It's not just about, hey, can we stick this on the package or not? But really, this is part of your brand's commitment to the people who use a product. Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Stuckey. I'm your host today. I'm the Chief Research Officer at InsightsNow, and I am delighted to be speaking with you today about reimagining your marketing claims testing. During this discussion today, please pour your questions into that Q&A section of Zoom, and I'll work to get those questions answered as I see them come up or see them come in. If not, I'll get to them at the very end. But let's get started using that feature right away. Here is a number. This number is related to claims, so I want you to use the Q&A. Tell me what you think this number represents. What do you think? So use the chat, use a Q&A. What do you think 2.5 represents in relationship to claims? Now, while you're thinking about that and typing those numbers in, I can tell you that this number comes from the last 47,000 or 48,000 claims assessments we've run. So certainly a lot of data going in behind that. Okay, so we got number of claims on a package. Yeah, that's a good possibility. Good possibility. No, not seeing it right. Okay, number of reviews, increase in purchase. Yep, all good possibilities, all good possibilities. Well, 2.5 in reality is the average number of seconds that it takes a person to read and make a decision about whether a claim is relevant to them or not. So that is an incredibly short period of time, which made us wonder, is traditional claims testing methods and the types of metrics we're collecting, is it working for us? Are we really collecting all the information we need to make sure that we have an impact in those first 2.5 seconds? So let me show you this a different way. Let's say you have a product and it was on the market and then you renovated it to be better than its competitors. Which of these two claims do you think would be more likely to be successful at increasing your sales? Now I'm going to launch a poll, so let me know what you think. Which of these two claims do you think would be more likely at increasing sales? New and improved or best tasting? Okay, lots of people flying in. I tell you, best tasting winning by 3%. So, all right, I'll pause that out. I'm going to end the poll. We have got, we're ending right now at 50-50, 50, 54, 47. So it basically went 50-50. Everybody going right through the middle here. So why do we think that's true? Why do we think that the claims assessment, that one of these two claims would work better or work not better? Now, that question really doesn't, you have limited amount of information, so it's really hard to answer that. But think about what your brain did as it tried to figure out which of those claims would work better, right? You started really rationalizing, well, if this, then that, maybe this, maybe that, maybe even put some of your own personal history in there, right? Which would, which one more connects with me personally? Now, I'm showing you this because this is a really common place for us to find ourselves when conversations with our clients who want claims testing done. This is where they often start the conversation. They want to know, hey, which of these claims is better? But what does it mean to be better, right? typically I hear that it's going to drive more sales, right? Well, that's good. But what does that mean, right? What does it really mean? Is that going to be through new users? Are you stealing share from others? Is it more frequent use from your loyalists, right? So where is your value coming from? What are you actually trying to accomplish with this claim via the behavior that consumers are going to do that's going to drive those sales and that value? So really, what is your core objective? And those are really different behavioral objectives. And honestly, we're going to need different data depending on what your objective is. So let's start by taking a look at some of the jobs that marketing messaging has to do. Now, there is essentially really only two jobs that marketing claims do. They either nudge people to do something they already wanted to do or already have a good routine in doing, or they disrupt them to get them to do or consider something new. Now, if you want your focus on claims research to be nudging people, right? You're going to do that when your goal is to keep their current habits going, increase the frequency at which they're using the product, increase the choice maybe of your product or another brand that provides the exact same service or value, or to strengthen current associations or beliefs people have about your brand, right? When you want to drive brand equity as your core. Now, you want to disrupt people if you want to drive a new or enhanced consideration for your product, if you want to introduce them to a new behavior or a new routine, or create some type of new association with your product and the value it provides, or your brand and the types of services it provides. So one of these two things tends to be more important for you when you go out with your program. So you want to start here by saying, what do we really want to do? What should this claim do to drive value for our organization and for the brand? Now, let's look at then what kind of data is traditionally collected. If those are your two objectives, one of those is going to be a stronger focus for you as an objective. Traditional marketing claims is typically a set of scaled questions, something like purchase intent, relevance, believability, fit to brand, right? Now, the huge challenge here is two pieces. First, those scales alone don't help you know what behavior you're going to get. So we can't really match the claim to whether it's going to nudge or disrupt based on a scaled question. And then second, really, those questions only use one way the brain processes information, only one way or one set of heuristics that people use to make decisions. So we're only getting one type of data. So to fully understand the true potential of a value or a message, we're going to need to incorporate all the core ways the brain uses to make decisions. We're going to want to understand implicit reactions. So reactions which are happening really faster than what it takes or how long it takes for us to rationalize or make like considered decisions. Those reactions are typically in response, right? Like this is those fast instantaneous pieces. So we want to figure out what's happening in that really short period of time, below the 2.5 seconds, by the way. The second is choice, right? This is when we, as our brain selects between one or more items. And we know that people use different mechanisms, different subconscious heuristics to make choices. But choice tends to be a good alignment with what happens at shelf, right? If I have these exact options in front of me, what's the probability I'll pick one versus another? So choice is a very valuable additional metric to have. Scaling, you've already seen that, right? This is that rational process, and it helps us understand the level. Think of this as an intensity potential, right? So something might be good, but how good, right? Something might be relevant, how relevant? Something might create intrigue, how much intrigue? Scaling gives you that. The next is ranking or ordering. This is where our brain organizes things, right? So that is a different mental process to try to organize things or sort things into some order, and our brain has to think about what dimensions are we using to create those ordered sets. And then the final is explicit reactions or rationalization. And this is typically done through open-ended responses. And this is where we're going to figure out, use explicit explanatory discovery and use our description skills, right, to be able to formulate some type of a response. So here is where we're going to use a lot more of our association thinking and organizing information and making decisions based on how it relates to other things, what kind of similarities or analogies our brain might be using to connect dots. So this is much more helps us understand relationships, right, and the underlying why behind choices. Right. So if we're going to get a complete picture of the value of a claim, and we want to leverage all the ways the brain uses to make decisions, we're going to need a study and a flow of that study that connects all those ways. So let's take a look at each one. And as we go through these, I'm going to use some information from the Scotch Cushion Lock case study, and we presented with them a couple of years ago. And so if you're interested in hearing their really amazing story about the development and launch of this really revolutionary product, you can go to our website, take a look at that. We'll put the link for it in our follow-up emails from this webinar, so you can nav to it that way as well. But it's pretty cool to hear the background behind how this really cool product came about. And you also get to see some of the data a little bit beyond what I'll share today if you're looking for a deeper dive into some of the claims. All right, so let's take a look at the first one, implicit assessments. Implicit assessments, this is a calibrated timed reaction exercise. And what this is allowing us to do is break apart whether a claim connects subconsciously through system one, or if it's more disruptive and it forces you to slow down your reaction. Now, how that works, really simply, you calibrate people at the very beginning. So you find for each individual person, what is their cutoff time using a calibration metric between an explicit and an implicit reaction in that very moment, because before and after they have their coffee, whether they're using a different device, all that changes those speeds at which the brain is reacting. So you want to calibrate them. Then you want to prime and focus the brain, which is pretty common. Most claims testing studies have a really good priming set because you're focused on a product and a situation, and then do that assessment. And that's going to give you that 4 data points. It's going to give you the fast implicit reactions that are either positive or negative, and it's going to give you the slow, more explicit reactions, which are either positive or negative. Now, in claims work, what's really fascinating about this type of data is the fast and the slow positive responses that say, hey, this claim is relevant to me. And now we can break apart the percentage of the population who is nudged by it versus who is disrupted by it. So in this example from Scotch, there was 2 claims that just stood out really pretty heavily in terms of connecting with people positively for this product. The first is fast and easy to use, and the second is takes up 85% less space. And the reference space was plastic bubble wrap here. So in the first one, now overall, they have 95, 96% of the people saying, yes, this connects with me. But the top one, fast and easy to use, that was 83% of the people were an implicit fast reaction. So that was going to nudge a really large portion of the population. Now, the second one, though, taking up 85% less space, we had 27% of the people slowed those people down just a little bit. So it was more disruptive to them. So what does that mean for them? Number one, these are equally important. And if you just put them on a scale, you wouldn't have seen any difference between them. But being able to see who's slowed down by that, and it forces them into a rational thinking process versus who sees that and just goes, yep, that's exactly what I want. You are going to be able to identify the differences in your claims. And depending on your goal, if I want to nudge people, if that's my objective is push more nudge, I'm going to pick fast and easy to use as a more important claim. If my job is to disrupt more people, I'm going to put more effort into talking about taking up less space because that's more disruptive to the market and creates different value proposition for people that maybe a bigger group of people hadn't considered before. Now, the next one is trade-offs, really choice making. And we like to use max diff as this metric for understanding choice, typically because you've got, in claims testing, you have a right-sized amount of claims that a max diff exercise is pretty straightforward for people. And here, if you're not familiar, consumers are shown a subset of the claims and get to choose which one's best and which one's worst. Like in this one, it's which one makes you most confident and least confidence that you're picking the right packaging material. So this forces people to make choices, and that's going to help you understand what matters most versus what's just kind of a nice to have. And that's really valuable, especially when all the claims that you put in your study are all pretty good, right? If you've done your homework well, you've picked a lot of claims then that are all really good and all have you think have good potential, then they're all going to score well. So this forced choice between them gives you a lot of opportunity. Okay, so all right. So does this give more? Good question. Does this give more clarity to the fast yes or fast no responses? Yes. So one of the things that we like to do is integrate or break apart claims that are more disruptive, and then see what happens in that choice set. And you'll see. We'll talk about this throughout. But all the different metrics. Remember, if your job is more disruptive or more nudge, you can look then at which of the claims, you can look at any of the metrics that we're going to show today, and you can divide them into those two subgroups to say, okay, of the disruptive claims, which one are forcing more choice, getting more high response, et cetera, so forth. So definitely a good way to layer in. These metrics all tend to work together because they all are connecting with different ways people make decisions. So combining them or leveraging them together, integrating them is all real valuable. Now, what do you get as an output from a max diff or a choice-oriented exercise? You get essentially relative influence of choice. Now, here, choice share, if you will, is a little bit of a it doesn't really predict exactly what's going to happen on the market because they're never going to be in a situation where all the claims are out there and they're picking their favorite. But what this does do is give you a relative scaled value importance of the relative potential of that each of the claims in influencing their choice. So what this does is give you an understanding of if you've got a lot of really good claims, which of the really good claims are the best of the best. Now, of course, if you have a whole bunch of terrible claims, it's still going to show you what's the best of the worst. So that's why you want this in addition to other types of metrics. So next one is scaled responses. And when we do this in concert with a max diff, we'll show the set of, say, those 3 claims in the max diff. Then we'll quick show the scaled responses for each of those 3, then show them another set of 3. So we'll flip back and forth between the max diff choice and the scaled responses. That keeps people engaged in the questionnaire, keeps them from getting bored. Going through, if you have 35 claims and you're going through 35 scaled responses, you're going to bore people pretty fast. So keeping people engaged. Now, I hope most of you are quite familiar with scaled questions. Here, though, I think what we see most challenging is people don't know what scales they really want and I think a lot of that is because they don't really know what objective they're really trying to hit behaviorally. So they often just ask all the questions, right? So scaled questions giving us a strength of the response. And this is really when people give it considered thought, like how important really is this to me? How much do I think this will really influence my purchase? Those are valuable measures because it tells you if they're all good or all bad, if you will, right? Now, we often suggest including purchase intent as your core, often because purchase at the end of the day is typically what 99% of most people doing claims work have as one of their primary goals. However, there's other questions that also are pretty valuable. So for instance, you might also have as part of your goal to, especially if you're in a disrupt situation, to be unique. So you might want to put a uniqueness, how unique or differentiated is this particular claim. You also may be in a very strong nudge, like you're the brand leader and you want to just continue feeding that habit. So you're really doing more brand strengthening as part of your claims messaging. In that case, you're going to want to do something like fit to brand in here so that you make sure that you've got that beautiful alignment with, yes, this is reinforcing a current brand belief. Okay. So several different options. Now, the challenge we have with scaled questions alone is that, especially when you have a lot of really great claims they've brought into the study, is that they tend not to be too differentiating. So you tend to be picking based on really small differences between things. So these are valuable, but you'll find that when you have a lot of really great things, it's harder and harder to use scales alone to pick, which is why choice metrics and then also ranking is very valuable. Now, we like to do ranking, in each of our studies because it provides like a forced ordered importance of the claim, and creating that ordered list in a person's brain, right? It requires the brain to think about, well, what dimensions am I really using? Which dimensions are really important? So if you think about claims, often you'll have a claim that's like more about in Scotch's example, some were more about protection of the product, some were more about the environment, some were more about taking up less space, right? So they kind of have different subsets of categories that you would consider as being potential influencers. Here, when you're ranking, if I have something about the environment and something about protection, I'm going to have to like come up with a way as a consumer to say which of those two things is most important to me. So that's going to help me as a researcher understand how those subcategories come to life as well. So the other thing about ranking is that if you try to get them to rank all 35 claims in your study, you're not going to really be very successful. So one of the things we like to do, and it also adds as another layer of knowledge, is we only have them rank those claims that came out as winners, right? Most influential, gives me the most confidence in the max diff exercise. So if you just have them rank those winners from the max diff exercise, you get one extra layer of value. And that's that for the people, if there's a small group of people out there who are picking a claim and saying, and this is my number one claim as well, you're able to find niche claims that are going to help you extend your reach. Now, these claims wouldn't be ones that you would go out with and, as your primary focus, but what it does do is it helps you layer on, right? It helps you layer on where you've got strong key claims. You can layer on claims that are targeting to a niche group of people that allow you to then get more reach overall with your claim set. Okay. Let's see. Could you use a point allocation like chit allocation rather than straight ranking? You can actually. Chit allocation, if you will, is kind of like magnitude estimation falls into this camp too. It's a little harder exercise for consumers to do. However, being able to do a chit allocation style process or a point allocation process, what you're doing in that scenario is you're essentially allowing a person to kind of combine scaling and ranking simultaneously. So a person, that's why it's a little harder mental process for people. But certainly, yes, you could do a allocation type process for like allocate 10 points across these as to which is most important to least important. It's not too dissimilar of a mental process. We tend not to use it just because it's a harder task, and a lot of people taking surveys get confused by that request. But I think if you have a few enough choices on the list and you've got a nice visual interface for people to do it, and it kind of automates the difference so they don't have to do math in their head, then you've got some potential. And yeah, I think that you would I would, if I was going to do it, I would probably put it in place of ranking. Good question. All right, now the final part about claims testing that I think is often overlooked is having people explain why they reacted the way they did or chose what they did. So using an open-end free response to the claim, and what we like to do is put in the claim that they picked as number one or ranked number one, because that way they're not explaining everything all over the place. This allows the consumer to use that explicit explanatory discovery and description skill that they have in their brain to formulate this response. Now, as researchers, I think most of the conversations we have, people say, well, it's kind of obvious. I already did my homework. I kind of know why people might want that claim. But when you do claims testing at scale in a survey and you get these top claims coming up, this is going to give you a little bit more robust information than you may have had. And it's going to be much more poignant because now they're in context of comparing and contrasting claims. And you're going to get not just an understanding of why that claim is important to them as a person, but you'll also start learning why are they choosing this claim over other claims. Like what is causing this particular claim for them to be better, because their context is all of these claims that they just saw. And so they're going to layer in all those additional values that you would not really have gotten in prior research. This also feeds now in today's opportunity to leverage an AI, right, for information sourcing and storytelling and finding themes. This also gives you an opportunity to continue to feed those AI models so you learn and learn and learn. Now, by thinking of this as a key review, you also really before launch start to get a sense of what people might say when you put that claim on the package. So I think the one thing that's great about these open ends that's kind of that additional value, it doesn't really help you pick which claim to use, but once you've picked it, it gives your agencies and your team a little bit of a heads up as to what kind of stories they should expect to see in a lot of the reviews coming out there. So I think that's also another bonus add on this. Now, one of the challenge that you're going to face, that everybody faces, is that, hey, let's use all these great new measures that we just talked about today. Well, gee, now you've got even more metrics to try and use to make a decision as to which ones to pick and move forward with. So one of the ways that we like to simplify this task is we create what we call a tournament index, because you got all these choices, all these rankings. It's really like a competition, right? So we index each and every one of those values. So we index the rank, index the win percent, index the scaling, index the implicit scores, and then combine those indexes together to come up with an overall average index for the tournament as a whole. So what this is doing is giving equal weight to all of the ways the brain is using to make decisions. And it's saying, given all the data, what's the overall score for this particular product? And we like 100-based indexes. Then you've got the ones that are above 100 or better than average, below 100, less than average. And you can use the raw information, right? The raw implicit scores, the raw scaling scores, the raw purchase intent scores, et cetera, to give you a sense of whether they're all good or all bad, right? So we find this is really good. Now, in this, I'm going to go back to one of the questions about fast, slow, in bringing implicit in. In this, you do have that opportunity to say, I want to see what's the best of some subgroup. So the best of the disruptors, what's the best of the nudge items as well. So in addition to just doing an overall index, you could layer in some other importance metrics, like you could give more importance in your index to, say, things that nudge. You could give more importance in your index to certain aspects that are really most important to the objective you're going to hit. Right. So using a more complete set of metrics really is going to allow for the selection of really the right information for your situation. So implicit, this is really going to show you how many people are going to be impacted, right? So it's not just a relative, hey, this skews that way or skews this way, but really you want to be able to break it into this percent of my population will get nudged, this percent will get disrupted. That gives you a lot of predictability about what's going to happen on the market. Second is choices, right? This is what they choose and what they take time to consider when they're taking time to consider the alternatives. You've got the scaling that gives you that relatability, right? What is the relative strength of the connection that a person has with that particular claim? Tells you if you have a whole bunch of bad ideas or a whole bunch of good ideas, really, at the end of the day. You've got ranking. So what's the most important based on how a person orders things? And then that full send explanation of why the claim connects with them personally and why that underlying value is really motivating. Okay. So in the end, you've got the focus. Are we going to nudge people, right? Is that our goal? Are we trying to disrupt people? Is that our goal? Are we trying to enhance consideration, introduce some new behavior or new association, create some new value on the market? And one of those two things is going to be more important for you, and you're going to want to layer that in. Now, when Scotch launched Cushion Lock, they were in a situation where they knew they needed to disrupt people. However, they were entering a category with a disruptive product where the habits were super ingrained. So they didn't want to ignore the nudge values. So what we came up with as a strategy is that we would pair up nudges and disrupts together as we went through the marketing messaging. So you see the proven to protect and expand wrap protect. Expand wrap protect was more of a disrupt. It disrupted more people, and proven to protect was a stronger nudge. So those went together as a claim set, if you will. Same thing with made with 100% recycled paper. We knew that was more disruptive, so that took the lead, the bold text, and then the nudge came along behind it, right? The sustainable alternative to plastic. And then same thing, advanced self-locking technology, very disruptive, right? That was actually key part of what was unique about this particular product versus the nudge that was like cushion conforms and locks and, gives you the everything you need without needing tape, right? It's more of a nudge, a little bit disruptive, but more of a nudge. So you can combine things as well based on what your strategy is and what you want to be able to accomplish. All right, so remember, you only have 2.5 seconds to make an impression on a person before they've made a decision. So make sure you have incorporated into your research the right metrics to be able to have the ability to impact them in a way that will make the most value for your brand in those first 2.5 seconds. All right, now is time for us to open it up to some questions. We've already got a bunch of really good questions that came through, and I answered, and I know a number of them as they came through. But if you have more questions or comments, certainly toss them in, and I'll start answering those as well. All right, so, all right. So, oh, Caleb dropping a thank you for the Cushion Lock team. Yeah, that's you guys were fantastic to work with, by the way. The Scotch team was really good here. Really good integration of a lot of people's brains, a lot of smart brains on that one. So very good. All right. Questions coming in. All right. So one question, you talked primarily about on-pack information. What about online resources like Amazon? That's a really good question. So we actually deal with this a lot. So one of the things that we find to be true is that you're going to want, when people go onto like sites like Amazon and they're reading product descriptions and reading product, if they get to the point where they're looking, like scrolling through the different images of the product and they're looking at all the different claims, they're ready and primed to be disrupted in that moment because of the way they're shopping, right? They're putting more effort into it already. So on your product specific page, right? So, this is post if they saw a whole bunch of images and just wanted to click on to get to your product specific. But on your product specific page, that's where you have the opportunity to put as much of the disruptive information as you can, because they're already in this mode where they're going to be rationalizing things and considering different options. So certainly if you're doing this research and you're finding, even if my job is to nudge people, those disrupt pieces may be very valuable to include in the online review areas and the online descriptions, because that's where they're already seeking out more information. But you still have to get them to that page, right? Which is usually the job of that, some of those lead claims. Okay. If we can nudge and disrupt, is there ever a scenario where we would not want to do one or the other? The only scenario that we've seen where you have to be very careful of disrupting is if you are the brand leader, if you own the vast majority of the share in a specific category for a specific product. If you start putting disrupt messages in front of people, you disrupt too many people, then they're going to stop and go, oh, what other brands are here? And you're going to actually lose share if you put disrupt messages in front of people. In the vast majority of all other cases, nudge, disrupt, you're going to look for a balance. Like you're going to look for things that either nudge more or disrupt more. And you're never going to find one that's like 100% nudge and 100% disrupt, right? That's nigh impossible to find, or I've never seen it anyway. Maybe some of you have some cool ones out there. But the only situation I would say is a red flag is if you are that absolute brand leader and you want to go in. The other that's more common also is if you're not number one in the category and you're trying to disrupt to those people who often steal share from whoever's number one, right? Or if you, like Cushion Lock, you have a really ingrained habit of just walking in and buying bubble wrap. You've got to be able to use a lot more disrupt in that space in order to get them to do that. And that's going to have to combine. I mean, you can't just go out with just, hey, put a message on a package and think you're going to win the market, right? You've got to have a full advertising plan behind that and messaging plan behind that. Okay. Another one. Have you found any differences or watch out in claims testing across industries like healthcare versus food, beverage, or is that pretty versatile framework? Very versatile framework. We use this across lots and lots of different categories. Where there's watch outs. Let's see. The watch outs come, number one, I'll get a generic watch out. Claims, obviously, as Sandeep had said at the beginning in that first quote, claims are a promise between your product and your brand and the consumer's experience. So one of the things that's a watch out is in some categories, those claims have to be supported by a lot of other background information, right? You may have like sensory claims or product efficacy claims or, and you really have to have supporting data that goes into that. And you may not be able to just kind of write the claim any way you want it. So one of the things that's true is, especially I've seen as you get into like personal care products and cosmetics, and that quote actually comes from an article that Sandeep had written on the cosmetics and personal care industry and looking at products and how he invests in them. And one of the things that is true there is you do have to have that proven data behind those claims, and you have a little bit more regulations on how to write those claims. So certainly we see that in certain situations, if the context of that use is important. Some products, some claims messaging, just screening them via a survey without actually getting people to use them. You may have claims that just fall, like in a survey, fall to the end because they're not having the real experience. So in some product categories, or some, it's actually more specific to a type of claim, right? So if you're going to talk about how amazing the crunch is of a product or how good tasting the product is, if that claim comes up good in a survey, you better still know that the product actually delivers against that claim at the expectation you're setting as well. So one of the things that I would say is true is you can have both situations, like the product does this really amazing thing, and that just doesn't pop as a very good claim, right? But if they'd actually paired that with the experience, maybe it does pop. So I would say the red flag's more of a contextual red flag than it is a industry red flag. Okay, very good question. Very good question. Let's see. Anything else? I don't see any other new questions on the board here. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. This has been a good session. I really appreciate it. Certainly, if you want to see more information, or if you have other team members that you think would value from this, you can certainly book a session with us. I'd be glad to chat with you guys live, especially if you have a team you're like, man, I would love to have more live conversation about this. Just go ahead and use the QR code here and book your live session. Now, coming up next month, our next webinar is going to continue a focus on implicit. We're going to actually jump into something much more specific. We're going to focus on ingredients in products. So this is going to be a little bit more food focused and personal care product and focus, where your focus is ingredients in a particular product. And we're going to look at how implicit can be used to measure risk. Which is a fascinating way that we're seeing a really good new application. I guess not super new, but really good, very powerful application of implicit testing, which is substantially different from how you would its value when you're doing claims testing. So looking forward to seeing you all there. We'll be getting that information out here shortly with times and dates. So have yourself an amazing day. Looking forward to connecting with more of you afterwards.